We look at the paper in our wallets and we think it is money. But history warns us that it is actually a ticking time bomb, waiting for the moment when faith runs out. This is Tom from the Collapse Log, exploring the rise and fall of empires. Because behind every golden age lies a quiet decay no one sees until it is too late. We think that inflation and currency collapse are modern problems created by central banks in the 20th century. We think that quantitative easing and money printing are new inventions, but they are not. The experiment has been run before. It happened nearly 1,000 years ago in a land that was centuries ahead of the West in technology and commerce. It happened in China during the Song Dynasty. They invented the first paper money. They created the first central bank. They experienced the first economic boom fueled by easy credit. And they suffered the first hyperinflationary collapse that wiped out the wealth of an entire empire. This is the story of how the world learned that you cannot print value out of thin air. This is the story of the first Fiat disaster. To understand how this catastrophe happened, we first have to understand the world of 11th century China. While Europe was still stuck in the Dark Ages struggling with feudalism and plague, China was the economic engine of the world. The Song Dynasty was a time of incredible innovation. They had gunpowder. They had the compass. They had massive cities with populations in the millions. The economy was booming. Merchants were trading tea and silk and porcelain across vast distances. But there was a massive problem that threatened to choke this economic engine. The money itself was broken. In the year 1000, the currency of China consisted of metal coins. These were round coins made of copper or iron with a square hole in the center so they could be strung together on a cord. These coins were durable, and they had real value because they were made of metal. But they were incredibly heavy. If you were a peasant buying a bowl of rice, a few copper coins were fine. But if you were a merchant trying to buy a shipment of silk from a distant province, you had a logistic nightmare. The coins were so heavy that to pay for a significant transaction, you needed an ox cart just to transport the cash. In the province of Sichuan, the situation was even worse. Due to a shortage of copper, the local government forced people to use iron coins. Iron is heavy and cheap. To buy a simple bag of salt, you needed a pile of iron coins that weighed more than the salt itself. Imagine trying to run a business when your wallet weighs 50 pounds. It was inefficient. It was dangerous because transporting carts of money attracted bandits. The economy was growing too fast for the physical supply of metal to keep up. The friction of money was slowing down the velocity of trade. The solution came not from the government, but from the free market. In the city of Chengdu, a group of wealthy merchants came up with a system to solve the weight problem. They started private deposit shops. A merchant could leave his heavy strings of iron coins at the shop, and the shopkeeper would give him a receipt. This receipt was a piece of paper that proved how much money he had in the vault. These receipts were called jiaozi. They were made of mulberry bark paper, and they had secret markings and intricate designs to prevent counterfeiting. At first, these receipts were just claim checks. If you wanted your coins back, you took the paper to the shop and redeemed it. But soon the merchants realized something profound. If they wanted to buy goods from another merchant, they didn't need to go back to the bank to get the heavy iron coins. They could just hand over the receipt. If the seller trusted the deposit shop, he would accept the paper as payment. The paper began to circulate. It moved from hand to hand, representing the iron coins locked away in the vault. For the first time in human history, value had been detached from physical matter. The weight of the transaction vanished. Commerce accelerated. It was a miracle of efficiency. The jiaozi allowed the economy of Sichuan to explode. But whenever there is a financial innovation, the government is watching. The emperor and his officials saw these merchants getting rich. They saw the power of this new paper money, and they decided that the state should control it. In the year 1024, the Song government banned the private deposit shops and took over the system. They established the world's first government-run banknote factory. They issued the first official state currency. At the beginning, the system was responsible. The officials understood that the paper was only valuable because people believed they could exchange it for metal. So for every note they printed, they kept a reserve of metal coins in the treasury. The reserve ratio was about 30%. They also did something very clever. They put an expiration date on the money. The notes were only valid for 3 years. After 3 years, you had to turn them in and get new notes or metal coins. This prevented the supply of paper from building up forever. It kept the system honest. For a century it worked. The Song Dynasty became the richest empire on earth. The paper money greased the wheels of trade. The government could collect taxes in paper. They could pay soldiers in paper. It seemed like they had discovered the secret to endless prosperity. They had turned mulberry bark into gold. But the temptation of the printing press is a drug that no politician can resist forever. The problem with paper money is that it is too easy to make. If you need more gold, you have to find a mine and dig it out of the ground. It is hard work. But if you need more paper money, you just need ink and a block of wood. The turning point came in the 12th century. The Song Dynasty was under attack. To the north, the Yuan tribes and later the Mongols were gathering on the borders. War is expensive. You have to pay for armies. You have to pay for weapons. You have to pay for fortifications. The government emptied the treasury. The metal reserves were gone. But the war was not over. The emperor faced a choice. He could raise taxes, which might cause a rebellion among his own people, or he could simply print more money. He chose the printer. The government began to issue notes without any metal backing. They abandoned the reserve ratio. They needed to pay the soldiers, so they printed the money to pay them. Then they made a second fatal mistake. They removed the expiration dates. The government declared that the notes were now valid forever. This meant the paper supply never shrank. It only grew. At first, the effects were subtle. There was more money in the system, so people felt richer. Business seemed good. But slowly, the prices began to creep up. A bag of rice that used to cost 100 coins now cost 110, then 150. The government tried to control the situation with laws. They mandated that paper must be accepted at the same value as copper. They tried to ban the use of metal coins to force people to use paper. But you cannot legislate value. Value is a belief, and the people were losing their faith. Then came the Mongols. The great war machine of the steppes pushed south. The Song government was fighting for its life. The printing presses ran day and night. They printed millions of notes to fund the defense. The supply of money flooded the market. The result was the first hyperinflation in history. The stories from this time are terrifyingly similar to what we saw in Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe. The paper money lost its value so fast that people rushed to spend it the moment they got it. If you waited until the afternoon, the price of bread would be higher than it was in the morning. Farmers refused to sell their grain for paper. They hid their harvest in the ground. They demanded barter or heavy metal coins. The economy, which had been so efficient and modern, ground to a halt. The wheelbarrows that used to carry iron coins were now used to carry stacks of worthless paper notes just to buy a chicken. The Song Dynasty fell in 1279. The Mongols took over. Kublai Khan became the emperor of China and founded the Yuan Dynasty. You might think that the Mongols, being outsiders, would see the disaster of the paper money and go back to gold. But Kublai Khan looked at the printing press, and he saw a weapon. He saw a way to extract the wealth of China without lifting a sword. Kublai Khan doubled down on the fiat currency system. He issued a new currency called the Chow. And unlike the Song notes, which at least pretended to be backed by metal, initially the Chow was pure fiat. It was backed by nothing but the threat of violence. Marco Polo, the famous Italian explorer, visited China during this time. He was amazed by what he saw. He wrote about it in his journals with a mix of awe and horror. He described the mint where the money was made. He said that the emperor causes the bark to be stripped from mulberry trees and pounded into a pulp. Marco Polo wrote that with these pieces of paper the emperor can buy anything in the world. He can buy gold and pearls and horses. He pays for them with paper that costs him nothing to make. And the people must accept it because the penalty for refusing the emperor's money is death. Marco Polo called it alchemy. He said the great Khan had found the secret of turning paper into gold. But Marco Polo was a traveler, not an economist. He didn't see the rot underneath the surface. Kublai Khan used this magical money to fund his massive empire. He built fleets to invade Japan. He built palaces. He lived in unimaginable luxury. But he was stealing the value from his subjects. Every note he printed was a hidden tax on everyone holding the currency. The inflation returned with a vengeance. The Yuan Dynasty printed more and more. They tried to fix the prices of goods. They executed merchants who raised prices. But the market is more powerful than any emperor. The price of rice soared to tens of thousands of notes. People stopped using the money. They went back to barter. The economy disintegrated. The trust that holds a society together was broken. When people cannot trust the money, they cannot trust the future. They stop investing. They stop building. They just try to survive. By the mid-14th century, the system had collapsed completely. The Yuan dynasty fell amidst peasant rebellions and economic chaos. The people were starving not because there was no food, but because the mechanism of trade had been destroyed by the printing press. When the Ming dynasty took power in 1368, they looked at the devastation caused by the paper money. They saw how it had destroyed two dynasties. And they made a radical decision. They abolished paper money. The Ming emperors concluded that fiat currency was a curse. They returned China to the hard money standard. For the next several hundred years, the economy of China ran on silver. They wanted money that was heavy. They wanted money that the government could not print. China, the country that invented paper money, abandoned it for centuries. They remembered the pain of the hyperinflation. They remembered the wheelbarrows of worthless paper. The lesson of the Song and Yuan dynasties is chilling because it is so familiar. The pattern is always the same. It starts with a genuine problem like a shortage of metal or a war. It offers a convenient solution. It creates a temporary boom that looks like prosperity. But the temptation to print is always too strong. The politicians always have a reason why they need more money today. They always promise that they will fix it tomorrow. They say that this time is different. They say that they have better tools and better theories than the people of the past. But the math never changes. If you increase the supply of money without increasing the supply of goods, the value of the money must go down. It is a law as real as gravity. We look back at the Song Dynasty and we might think they were primitive. We might think they didn't understand economics. But they were sophisticated. They had reserve ratios. They had expiration dates. They had anti-counterfeiting laws. They had everything that our modern central banks have. And yet they failed. They failed because the political pressure to print money will always overwhelm the economic discipline to stop. Today we live in a world of global fiat currency. Every major nation on earth uses money that is backed by nothing but faith and government decree. We have removed the connection to gold. We have removed the limits on the supply. We are running the same experiment that Kublai Khan ran 700 years ago. We see the debt piling up. We see the prices rising. We see the governments printing trillions to pay for their expenses. We tell ourselves that we are smarter than the ancients. We tell ourselves that we can manage the impossible. But the ghosts of the Song Dynasty are watching us. They are whispering from the history books. They are telling us that paper eventually returns to its intrinsic value. And the intrinsic value of paper is zero. The first fiat disaster was a warning. It showed that money is not just a tool of trade. It is a contract of trust between the rulers and the ruled. When that contract is broken by the printing press, the society crumbles. China went back to silver rocks to save itself. But in our modern digital world, there are no silver rocks to go back to. When the printing press stops working this time, there will be no going back. History does not repeat, but it rhymes. And the sound of the printing press is a rhythm that has played before, right before the silence of the collapse.